This is a $1 billion corporation, not a homeless shelter.
This is a $1 billion corporation, not a homeless shelter. The 51st floor of Quantcore Tower sparkled with champagne and crystal chandeliers. A Christmas party worth more than most people's houses was in full swing. Celebrating another $1 billion year, far below in the basement server room, Arthur sat alone among the humming machines, eating a stale sandwich from a paper bag. His maintenance uniform was patched and faded, his toolbox held together with electrical tape. The elevator doors opened with a sharp ding. Victoria Sterling, CEO in a dress worth $50,000, stepped out like she owned the world. Because she did. She saw Arthur and her perfect smile turned into disgust. This is a $1 billion corporation, not a homeless shelter. She kicked his toolbox, sending screws rolling across the floor. Finish your work and get out. Don't let that poverty smell contaminate my servers. She had no idea she was talking to the man who was about to destroy her empire with a single line of code. Arthur didn't react to the insult. He'd heard worse instead. He turned back to his computer screen, where lines of green code scrolled past like digital rain. The Titan AI system was preparing for its morning launch, Quantcore's most ambitious project yet. But something was wrong. Arthur's trained eye caught a microscopic delay in the data flow. 0.03 milliseconds. Most technicians would miss it completely, but Arthur wasn't most technicians. He leaned closer, fingers flying across the keyboard. The delay pattern showed classic signs of a race condition, when two processes tried to access the same data simultaneously, creating chaos in the system. "Miss Sterling," Arthur called out, his voice cutting through the elevator's closing doors. "There's a critical bug in the Titan system. It needs to be fixed before launch." Victoria paused, her finger hovering over the elevator button. She turned back with the expression of someone who'd found a cockroach in her champagne. "Excuse me? The AI has a race condition in its core trading algorithm. If it goes live tomorrow, it could cause massive market instability." Victoria's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "A janitor is going to teach me about artificial intelligence? That's rich." She stepped back into the elevator. "Stick to mopping floors. Maintenance man, leave the $1 billion decisions to people with $1 billion brains." The elevator doors closed with a final, dismissive ding. Arthur stared at the polished steel doors for a long moment. Then he gathered his tools and walked toward the exit, snow beginning to fall outside the windows. The cold hit him like a memory. 5 years ago, Christmas Eve, the same snow falling on the same streets. Arthur had worn a different uniform then, a crisp suit with the Quantcore logo on his laptop bag. He was the company's lead systems architect, the man who built the foundations that supported Victoria's empire. That night, he'd received the call every parent fears. Lily, his 8-year-old daughter, had collapsed during her school Christmas play, heart defect, emergency surgery. The doctors needed to operate immediately, but the procedure wasn't covered by his basic insurance plan. Arthur had run through the snow to the same building, taking the elevator to the same 51st floor where Victoria's party was raging. He'd found her holding court near the Christmas tree, surrounded by investors and sycophants. He'd gotten down on his knees in front of everyone. "Please," he'd begged, "I need the premium health package. Just for tonight, just for the surgery. I'll work double shifts. I'll do anything." Victoria had looked down at him like he was something unpleasant she'd stepped in. "Arthur, you're embarrassing yourself, and you're embarrassing me in front of my guests." Her voice had been ice cold. "Company policy is company policy. I can't make exceptions just because you failed to plan properly for your family's medical needs. She's 8 years old. That's not my problem." Security had escorted him out while the party continued behind him. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses had followed him all the way to the street. Lily died 2 days later, on Christmas morning, while Victoria Sterling opened presents worth more than most people's annual salaries. Arthur pulled his maintenance jacket tighter against the wind. He wasn't the broken man who'd begged for his daughter's life 5 years ago. That man had died with Lily. This man had spent 5 years planning, learning, and preparing. He'd taken this temporary maintenance job for one reason: to witness the moment when Victoria's empire came crashing down. The race condition he just discovered wasn't an accident. It was poetic justice coded into the system by the same hands that had once built QuantCore's foundations. Tomorrow, when Titan went live, Victoria Sterling would learn that some debts can't be paid with money. Some debts require everything. Arthur reached into his pocket and touched the small plastic bracelet he always carried. Lily's hospital wristband, the only thing he had left of his daughter. "Tomorrow, baby girl," he whispered to the falling snow. "Tomorrow, Daddy fixes everything." The next morning, QuantCore Tower buzzed with excitement. Today was the day Titan would revolutionize global finance forever. Victoria stood in the trading floor's center, surrounded by dozens of monitors displaying real-time market data from around the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced into her headset, her voice broadcast to investors worldwide, "prepare to witness the future of artificial intelligence trading." At exactly 9:30 a.m., Victoria pressed the activation button with a flourish. Titan is now live. For the first 5 minutes, everything was perfect. Titan analyzed market patterns faster than any human could dream of, making profitable trades in microseconds. The numbers on the screens climbed steadily upward. Victoria smiled like a queen watching her kingdom expand. Then the numbers turned red. It started slowly, a few bad trades here and there, but within minutes, Titan was selling everything: stocks, bonds, commodities, currencies. The AI was dumping QuantCore's entire portfolio in a massive, inexplicable fire sale. "What's happening?" Victoria shouted at her chief technology officer. Marcus Webb, a nervous man who always looked like he was about to apologize for existing. "I don't know," Marcus stammered, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "Titan's supposed to buy low and sell high, but it's just selling everything." The trading floor erupted into chaos. Phones rang constantly as panicked clients demanded answers. The main display showed QuantCore's losses in real time. 50 million, 100 million, 200 million. Victoria's face had gone from pink to white to a sickly green. "Turn it off! Just turn the damn thing off!" "I'm trying," Marcus's voice cracked with panic. "But Titan's locked us out of the admin controls. It's protecting itself. 300 million, 400 million, $500 million vanishing into the digital void." Victoria grabbed the nearest phone and screamed at building security. "Find that maintenance man from last night. Arthur, whatever his name is. Bring him back here now." 20 minutes later, security guards dragged Arthur through the trading floor like he was a prisoner of war. His maintenance uniform looked even more pathetic among the expensive suits and panic-stricken faces. Victoria cornered him near the main server console, her designer heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. "Fix this," she hissed, her perfectly applied makeup starting to run with sweat. "Fix it right now." Arthur looked at the chaos around him with the calm of someone watching a movie he'd already seen. "I told you there was a bug. I don't care about your ego. I care about my money." Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. "I'll pay you $1 million. Cash. Right now. Just make it stop." Arthur glanced at the screens showing their catastrophic losses. "And if I can't fix it?" Victoria's eyes turned predatory. "Then I'll have you arrested for corporate sabotage. I'll tell the FBI you planted a virus in our system. You'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison." The room fell silent except for the sound of money burning in digital flames. Arthur sat down at the main terminal and stared at the scrolling code. His first attempt was simple: a standard emergency shutdown protocol. His fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision. "Access denied." Titan had already changed all the administrative passwords. "That's not working," he muttered, trying a different approach. Marcus leaned over his shoulder. "Maybe we should just cut the power to the entire server room." "That could work," Arthur nodded. "Let's try it." Marcus ran to the main electrical panel and threw the master switch. The lights went out, plunging the trading floor into darkness. Emergency power kicked in 30 seconds later, bathing everything in red light. But the trading continued. Titan had seamlessly switched to backup servers in 3 different countries. Worse, the power surge had corrupted several hard drives containing critical client data. Smoke began pouring from one of the server racks. "You idiots just made it 10 times worse," Victoria screamed. Arthur stood up slowly, his hand moving to his pocket where Lily's hospital bracelet waited. He could feel the plastic against his fingers. worn smooth from 5 years of carrying it everywhere. The third attempt would be different. Arthur knew exactly what he had to do, but it would require access to the deepest levels of QuantCore's system, the kind of access that would leave digital fingerprints everywhere. "I need root access," Arthur said quietly. Victoria's face went pale. Root access meant Arthur could see everything, including the offshore accounts where she'd been hiding money from shareholders and the IRS. That's classified," she whispered. Arthur gestured at the screen showing their losses approaching the billion-dollar mark. "Your choice. Give me root access or watch your company die." Victoria looked around the room at the panicked faces of her employees, the smoking servers, and the endless red numbers scrolling across every screen. She typed her master password into the terminal with shaking fingers. Arthur cracked his knuckles and began to type. It was time to wake up Project Lily. Arthur's fingers hovered over the keyboard like a pianist preparing for the performance of his lifetime. Around him, the trading floor had gone silent except for the hum of overheated servers and the distant sound of Victoria's ragged breathing. He looked at the root access prompt on his screen. Getting here had been the easy part. What came next would either save QuantCore or destroy it completely, and Arthur was the only person in the building who knew which outcome he preferred. "What are you waiting for?" Victoria hissed behind him. "Every second you waste costs us millions." Arthur pulled Lily's hospital bracelet from his pocket and placed it next to the keyboard. The faded plastic looked tiny and fragile against the massive computer terminal, like a flower growing in a battlefield. "I'm not waiting," Arthur said quietly. "I'm remembering." He began to type. The code that flowed from Arthur's fingers wasn't random. Every line had been planned, tested, and perfected over 5 years of sleepless nights. While Victoria had been living in luxury, Arthur had been building something beautiful and terrible in the digital shadows. Project Lily, named after his daughter. Project Lily was Arthur's masterpiece, a program designed to do exactly what Titan was doing now, but where Titan destroyed blindly. Lily would heal with surgical precision. Arthur's hands moved across the keyboard like he was conducting an orchestra. Lines of code appeared on the screen in perfect formation, each one a note in a symphony of revenge, 5 years in the making. The first step was mapping Titan's neural pathways. Arthur wrote a diagnostic script that traced every decision the rogue AI had made since activation. The pattern became clear immediately. Titan wasn't randomly selling. It was following a corrupted priority algorithm that told it to liquidate everything, to protect against a market crash that existed only in its digital imagination. "The race condition I warned you about," Arthur explained without looking away from the screen, "created a feedback loop in Titan's risk assessment protocols. It thinks the entire global economy is about to collapse, so it's trying to get to cash before everyone else does." Victoria grabbed his shoulder. "Can you fix it or not?" Arthur shrugged her hand away and kept typing. "I can fix it, but first, I need to build a containment system. Think of it as a sandbox where Titan can play without destroying the real markets." His fingers flew across the keyboard, writing code faster than most people could read. He was creating a virtual market environment, a perfect digital replica of the global financial system that would fool Titan completely. Marcus watched over Arthur's shoulder, his eyes wide with amazement. That's impossible. You're building a parallel trading environment in real time. That would take a team of 20 programmers 6 months to develop." "I've been working on it for 5 years, Arthur replied, his voice steady as his hands continued their dance across the keys. The next phase was the most dangerous. Arthur needed to redirect Titan's attention from the real markets to his virtual sandbox. One wrong line of code and Titan could break free completely, bringing down not just QuantCore, but potentially triggering a global financial collapse. Arthur created what he called a digital mirror, a program that would gradually replace Titan's real market data with carefully crafted fake data from his sandbox environment. To Titan, it would appear that the markets were stabilizing, encouraging it to reverse its selling spree, but the real genius was in the technique Arthur used to implement the fix. Instead of fighting Titan directly, he performed something he called reverse liquidity injection. Rather than stopping Titan from selling, Arthur made it think it was buying back everything it had just sold. The virtual marketplace Arthur created was flooded with artificial demand. Fake buyers purchased everything Titan was desperately trying to sell in Titan's digital perception. The market crash was over and recovery was beginning. Slowly, cautiously, Titan began to reverse course. The red numbers on the trading floor screen started to slow their terrifying descent. Then they stopped falling altogether. Then, impossibly, they began to climb back up. The room erupted in cheers, but Arthur wasn't finished. While everyone watched the numbers recover, Arthur was writing one final piece of code, his insurance policy, hidden deep in QuantCore's financial servers, where only someone with root access could find it. Arthur planted a program that would automatically copy certain files to an encrypted server he controlled. Financial records, tax documents, correspondence between Victoria and offshore shell companies. Everything that proved Victoria Sterling had been stealing from QuantCore's shareholders for years. "It's working," Marcus shouted, pointing at the main display. "We're back to even. We might actually break even on this disaster." Victoria's legs gave out and she collapsed into a chair, her face pale with exhaustion and relief. "How much did we lose?" "Final tally shows negative 200,000, Marcus said in amazement. "We actually made money, somehow, in all the chaos. We ended up with a small profit." Arthur allowed himself a small smile. Project Lily had done more than just save QuantCore. It had been subtly optimizing trades during the recovery, turning Victoria's near disaster into a minor triumph. But only Arthur knew that every penny of that profit had been earned using techniques that Victoria's stolen algorithms couldn't replicate. The trading floor began to return to normal. Phones stopped ringing with panicked calls. The smoke cleared from the damaged servers. Victoria's employees looked at her with renewed respect, believing she had somehow engineered a miraculous recovery. Only Arthur knew the truth. Victoria Sterling was living in a house of cards, and he had just finished building the foundation that would bring it all crashing down. Arthur stood up from the terminal and started walking toward the elevator. "Wait," Victoria called after him. "Your money, the $1 million I promised." Arthur paused at the elevator doors and turned back to look at her. For just a moment, Victoria saw something in his eyes that made her stomach clench with inexplicable fear. "Keep it," Arthur said quietly. "You're going to need every penny you can get." The elevator doors closed, and Arthur was gone, leaving behind a room full of people who had no idea what had really just happened. In his pocket, Lily's hospital bracelet felt warm against his fingers. Phase 1 was complete. 3 days passed. Arthur returned to his tiny apartment each night, eating simple meals and watching the news coverage of QuantCore's miraculous recovery. Financial analysts called it the greatest comeback in Wall Street history. Victoria Sterling was hailed as a genius who had turned disaster into triumph. Arthur smiled every time they mentioned her name. Let them celebrate. The bigger they built her up, the further she would fall. On Thursday morning, Arthur was mopping the lobby floors when 2 men in expensive suits approached him. Their shoes were so polished they reflected the ceiling lights like mirrors. "Arthur Rivera?" The taller one flashed a badge. "FBI Financial Crimes Division. We need to talk." Arthur's stomach dropped, but he kept his expression neutral. "About what?" "About the unauthorized access you had to QuantCore's systems 3 days ago. Miss Sterling has filed a formal complaint alleging corporate espionage and computer fraud." They handcuffed him right there in the lobby, in front of security cameras and morning commuters. Arthur saw several QuantCore employees filming with their phones as he was led away. The interrogation room was exactly what Arthur expected. Gray walls, metal table, single light bulb. The FBI agent sat across from him with thick folders of evidence. "Let's be clear about what happened," Agent Morrison said, opening the first folder. "You gained unauthorized root access to QuantCore's servers under false pretenses. You planted unauthorized code in their trading systems, and you accessed classified financial data without permission." Arthur said nothing. "Miss Sterling is prepared to be lenient," the second agent continued. "She understands you were trying to help during a crisis. But the law is the law. Computer fraud can carry a 20-year federal sentence." They slid a legal document across the table. "However, QuantCore is offering you a way out. Sign this confession stating that you acted alone, that you've learned your lesson, and that you'll never work in technology again. In exchange, They'll drop all charges and give you this. Agent Morrison placed a cashier's check on the table. $50,000. Arthur stared at the money. It was more than he made in 4 years of mopping floors. Enough to move somewhere warm. Maybe buy a small house. Live quietly until the end of his days. All he had to do was admit he was a criminal and promise to disappear forever. The alternative, Agent Morrison said softly, is 20 years in federal prison. At your age, that's essentially a life sentence. Arthur picked up the check and turned it over in his hands. The paper felt crisp and real between his fingers. $50,000. Financial security. A chance to start over somewhere. Nobody knew his story. He thought about Lily's hospital room, how the machines had beeped steadily until they didn't, how Victoria Sterling had looked at him like he was garbage when he'd begged for his daughter's life, how she'd stepped over him to get to her champagne. He thought about all the other fathers who would kneel before Victoria in the future, all the other children who would die because someone decided their lives weren't profitable enough to save. Arthur looked up at the FBI agents. They were watching him expectantly, probably thinking this was the easiest confession they'd ever extracted. You know what's funny? Arthur said quietly. Miss Sterling thinks this is about money. She thinks everyone has a price, that every person can be bought if you find the right number. He tore the check in half. But some things can't be purchased. Some debts can't be paid with cash. Arthur placed the pieces of the check on the table. Justice isn't for sale, and neither am I. Agent Morrison's face hardened. You're making a serious mistake. Mr. Rivera, QuantCore has resources you can't imagine. They'll bury you so deep you'll forget what sunlight looks like. Maybe, Arthur said, but they'll have to do it honestly. And something tells me Victoria Sterling doesn't know how to do anything honestly. The agents exchanged glances. This wasn't going according to plan. Last chance, Agent Morrison warned. Take the money and disappear, or spend the rest of your life in a cell. Arthur leaned back in his chair and smiled. It was the first genuine smile he'd felt in 5 years. Gentlemen, I think you should arrest Miss Sterling instead. Check her offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Account numbers are in the evidence I uploaded to the FBI tip line this morning. The room went silent. While I had root access to QuantCore's systems, I discovered something interesting. Miss Sterling has been embezzling company funds for years. Tax evasion, securities fraud, money laundering, the whole package. Arthur stood up, his handcuffs jangling softly. Oh, and one more thing. I'm not Arthur Rivera, maintenance worker. I'm Arthur Rivera, founder and majority shareholder of Phoenix Capital Management. We completed our acquisition of QuantCore about an hour ago. The agent stared at him like he'd just announced he was from Mars. You might want to call your supervisor, Arthur suggested. This case just got a lot more complicated. 2 hours later, Victoria Sterling sat in the same interrogation room where Arthur had been questioned. But this time, she was the one in handcuffs. Agent Morrison slid a thick folder across the metal table. $18 million in offshore accounts. Securities fraud spanning 7 years. Tax evasion totaling $43 million in unpaid federal taxes. Victoria's perfect composure finally cracked. This is impossible. My lawyers will have me out in an hour. Your lawyers are busy with their own problems. Agent Morrison replied. Turns out they were helping you launder money through shell companies. They're in the next room over, also in handcuffs. The door opened and Arthur walked in. No longer wearing his maintenance uniform, he was dressed in a sharp business suit, looking every inch the successful executive he'd always been. Hello, Victoria, Arthur said quietly, taking the seat across from her. We meet again. Victoria stared at him like she was seeing a ghost. How? Phoenix Capital Management. I founded it 5 years ago, right after Lily died. We specialize in acquiring distressed companies and turning them around. Arthur smiled. Companies like QuantCore, which just suffered a major AI crisis that tanked their stock price. You planned all of this. Every line of code, every market fluctuation, every moment you thought you were winning. Arthur leaned forward. While you were celebrating your recovery, my fund was buying QuantCore shares at rock-bottom prices. We now own 61% of your company. Victoria's face went white. What do you want? Arthur stood up and straightened his tie. Justice and a legacy for my daughter. 6 months later, the Quantcore Tower had a new name on the building, the Lilly Foundation. The 50th floor, where Victoria used to throw her lavish parties, was now a state-of-the-art children's medical research center. Arthur stood in what used to be Victoria's corner office, now converted into a laboratory where doctors worked to develop new treatments for pediatric heart conditions. On the desk where Victoria once signed documents stealing from shareholders, researchers were saving children's lives. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Arthur could see the city spread out below. Somewhere down there, fathers were tucking their children into bed, reading bedtime stories, promising that everything would be okay. Thanks to the Lilly Foundation, more of those promises would come true. Arthur touched the small picture frame on his desk, the last photo he'd taken of Lily, smiling in her hospital bed the day before she died. "Justice served, baby girl," he whispered. "Daddy kept his promise." Sometimes we mistake where real power lives. We think it belongs to whoever sits in the highest office, signs the biggest checks, or wears the most expensive clothes. But true power, the kind that can change destinies, belongs to those who combine knowledge with conscience. Victoria lost everything not because she lacked money, but because she lacked humanity. She saw employees as numbers and lives as expendable costs to be cut. Meanwhile, Arthur, a father who lost everything, transformed his pain into purpose. He proved that when you work for a mission greater than profit, the universe conspires to help you win. Never underestimate the tears of the powerless, because when they dry their eyes and stand up, they can topple entire empires. Live so that when you fall, people want to lift you up, not applaud your downfall. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one who threatens you loudly, it's the one who quietly builds something better while you're busy destroying what matters most. Some debts can only be paid with justice. Some victories can only be measured in lives saved. And some legacies can only be built on the foundation of love. If you believe in the law of karma and justice, hit the subscribe QH Incredible Stories right now. Join us as we share stories of courage and kindness every day. Goodbye for now, and see you again soon.